computer. Hey guys, we are here with your Rosebud Thorns for February 21st.
Yeah, so this is our new style of doing the Rosebud Thorn. We're going to give it a little try here for a while, make sure that it kind of works for what we're looking for. And yeah, we're excited to get through everybody's Rosebud Thorn.
And hopefully we can get some more instructors, and then maybe we can get back to our regular Wednesday night
Anybody
meeting.
wants to teach spin Wednesday nights, you're in. No.
So without further ado, we've gotten actually quite a few Rosebud Thorns, and I actually love this because I feel like we're maybe getting more than what we might normally get. So we have Megan sent in her rose is definitely her workouts. Her bud is navigating life, work, kids, and the gym, feeling anxious this week, trying to manage it all, which I can totally relate to that feeling. Thorn, eating and calories. I'm all over the place this week. So we'll do we want to address the thorns as they come up right away here, or do we want to
Maybe.
or do we want to amalgamate and see what happens?
Let's see what happens because so right now eating and calories. So what we have one for eating and calories. We'll see how this goes.
Okay. Cindy says her rose is the week my workouts are going well and I'm learning to track everything, even if I think that it's bad food.
I want to say something right there. I absolutely love this because there is no bad food. And if we don't track everything, then we're really just cheating ourselves because we can't give you input on your food logs if you don't track everything. So awesome job tracking it all.
No bad food. It's just food.
Just food.
But my water intake is coming along. I'm working on drinking more than 1 liter per day. Thorn, getting carbs has been a bit more difficult, but I'm learning what foods will help increase those. Things like honey.
Honey is definitely carbohydrates. You want some simple sugars. Let's go.
Chris says, Rose, moving more than I have on my days off. The last 2 months, went to the gym twice and ran and had a run and 2 walks.
Yeah.
Bud, eating the proper amounts of calories in whole foods, getting closer to my daily goals, but still haven't hit them yet. And Thorn, actually getting back into workouts, feeling good when I'm actually doing the workouts or run, but I'm getting back into the routine.
Routine is that hard thing. I love that. So we got one for food, one for routine. What was the last one again?
Carbs.
Carbs.
More food.
Food, and routine. Love it. Okay. Number 3 is Riker. So he's the Rose says my nutrition's been going pretty good for me. 100% it is. Bud is increased calorie intake has been coming along. Riker eats a lot of food and we're working on that. That's great. Thorn is hitting the workouts because of an injury. Okay, so we can definitely touch on injury. I know we've talked about it a lot in the past, so we will touch on it and kind of what that looks like for recovery. And oddly enough, calories is going to play into that too.
Willow says, Rose, I'm starting to get a little energy back this week. I hope to get back to workouts today. And I know she's been ill for a while, so that's really great news. But my weight is still going in the right direction, and I feel deep progress. I wonder what deep progress is. I like it.
Layered progress. I absolutely love that too.
Thorn, just coming out of the illness is a pain. I'm trying not to go too easy on myself while having some grace, and balance is a difficult one to get to.
100%. I know that feeling coming out of an injury or coming out of an illness and wanting to get right back to pushing, but having to kind of gauge that back. Okay. I get that.
Christine says, do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
You're doing great.
Okay, thank you.
She likes to, if you guys don't know Kaila, she talks a bit.
No way. Rose, Christine says her rose, I tried a new recipe and it turned out amazing. I'm eating good this week. Yeah. Ooh, I'd love to know what that recipe is.
Right.
Because now I want to try it. Bud, exercise, feeling the effects the next day for sure. Thorn, cravings. I try to drink water in place or get up and move. Most times it helps to alleviate or distract. I definitely will be doing a pantry sweep tonight. Those darn Sour Patch Kids keep taunting me.
Kids, right? Kids are the worst. Even the Sour Patch ones. Oh, I love it.
Michelle says her rose, swimming and being a bit more social. That's always important for us humans. We need to be social. Bud, meals, I guess. that sounds more like a question. Thorn, just in general can be difficult. Life can be difficult. I don't like to keep saying the same things are difficult. Losing weight is difficult. Food is difficult. People are difficult. Pain is difficult. It's just a normal now and now a day.
Nowadays, and
Thank
sometimes
you.
life can just be difficult, but there's always tomorrow. I love that outlook. I love that because everybody goes through periods of, difficult and challenge in our life, and being able to look at that as an opportunity for growth and evolving is awesome. So I love that mindset, Kelly.
What a good shift. Casey says his Rose, my workouts are going great. My butt, I'm finding that stretching my calf and hamstring is helping my knee feel less pressure. That's fantastic. Thorn, literally a pain in my knee. My knee is still really bothering me. If I sit on it for more than a minute, I have trouble walking on it until circulation returns. So we'll definitely touch on compression of the knee joint.
Yeah.
Something to talk about for sure. Ashley says, Rose, workout, still trying to get to give it my all, bud. Workouts, just because these ones are new and I'm still learning it and how to do them. So that's important. Thorn, I've become complacent in my eating habits over the last couple of weeks. I need to snap back to being as motivated as when I started. Her and I had a good chat about that yesterday. So I am still going to touch on it because I'm sure that she's not the only one that's become complacent in things. We all get that way. And then Chris says his Rose.
It's last week's.
Oh, that was last week's.
We're getting into last week's.
We're getting into
now.
last week's. My apologies. I was like, I thought I read Chris's already. So fantastic. Thank you to everybody that sent one in. And if you didn't get an opportunity to do it, we will look for yours next week.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So I'm going to just start at the bottom and work our way back up to the tippy top because I can't remember them all.
Neither can I.
We
Brains are going everywhere.
We should have done this in order, but that's okay. So let's chat about Ashley's complacency and her eating habits the last couple of weeks, snapping back to motivation. So
motivation is that fun thing. It's very fleeting, and you guys have heard us say this a million times, but it couldn't be more true that action comes before motivation. So when we start to notice that there's some complacency in our food, we notice that we're starting to, fall back into old habits and routines that we've had in the past. Just starting to get really aware of that situation and why we might be doing that. If there's triggers around us that are pushing us back to that way, or if we're just simply bored of eating the same foods over and over because we feel as though we need to eat the same thing every day just to make our lives easier for tracking. I get that 100%. But if you are somebody that gets bored with your food easily, having an amazing person that can give you different options that are going to give you roughly the same caloric intake is a great thing, because variety really is the spice of life. So finding things that are still on track but are different from your everyday is where I would start.
Okay. So just because I know Ashley and I know what she's talking about here. So she's not talking about the types of food she's eating. She's complacent because we're getting results. So the thing is that when we get results over a period of time, we're like, oh, I'm kind of happy with where I'm at for these results. I'm really enjoying these. And we kind of almost like want to sit in that enjoyment a little longer than pushing for more, if that makes sense. So the biggest things with complacency is understanding why we might be complacent or why we might be feeling that way and what our actual goals are and the importance of those, right? So let's just pretend like we've lost 10 pounds. Like that feels really good. And we feel like we were really motivated to lose that initial weight. But now maybe I'm happy with this and I'm happy with my life. And maybe I don't actually want to push harder, or maybe I do. So really starting to evaluate the importance of the goals and maybe rejigging the goals, starting to find a visual representation of your goals, something that reignites that driving force, that thing that makes us want to do it, versus it being, when I'm happy with where I'm at, I'm healthy. Like I can speak to this, without going into great detail, but one of the things that Ashley and I had chatted about was the idea of being healthy and how important that was to overall goal of I just want to be healthy. And then, I had made the comment to her, I said, well, look around your life. How many people do you see that are healthier than you, that are taking more action towards their health? And she's like, you know what? I think that spurred my complacency, because she said, I looked around my life and realized I was the healthiest one, So it's kind of that idea of like, I am actually doing really good, but riding that high of that win, celebrating those wins along the way, and continuously striving for a new win, a new purpose of that will keep us going forward, so that we don't draw on that complacency, because it is easy to look around and going, I'm doing really good compared to all these guys. Like, why do I want to keep pushing? So finding that why.
I love that. And I just want to, like, the idea of progression in lifetime, right? Like in every facet of your life, whether it's like learning, that I always say that the day you stop learning is the day you stop living, right? So, continually striving for more. What is that next iteration? What does that next version of yourself look like? And what will it take to get there? Right? Is there a shorter path to that next version of yourself? Maybe there is, but maybe we're not ready for that shorter path. And maybe we are, like Kaila and like we're saying here, maybe there's that bit of complacency, and it's, learning what will get you to that next level and what you're willing to do right now to start working towards that. It doesn't have to be the big things, but maybe we're taking small steps and small actions towards that goal over time to see that progression. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, really important to start to become the observer of our lives, right? When you can step back and begin to observe your life and your day to day versus being in it, we can really start to see the patterns. Where am I falling complacent? Why might I be falling complacent in these patterns? Because, like, I am eating really well or eating really consistently and those kinds of things. So where are those patterns drawing from? Okay.
Love it.
Casey, talking about knee pain. So let's talk about anatomy of the knee.
Well, no, we don't want to go too much into this. I know we talked about this one at our last call that we did too. So I know that this is like the acute injury from when we were potentially running on a beach. So, like we talked about before, just getting more of the stretches in there, making sure that we're not going too far into ranges of motion with that knee until it is starting to feel better. And then once our knee is, once we're starting to get out of that acute phase and we're just kind of into that dull pain phase, we'll call it, then we can actually start looking at the rehabilitation of the knee, because realistically it does take time, especially when we're looking at inflammation in the joint, which is what Casey had said he was experiencing, was inflammation under that kneecap. So allowing the time for it to kind of come out of that flare up, and then starting to work on the mobility and starting to work the strength back into that joint and the muscles around it.
Yeah. So what I was kind of thinking was the muscles around the knee joint. So if we think about what kind of attaches in and around the knee joint, we have our gastrocnemius, which is like our calf muscle. We have our tibialis anterior, so the muscles of the front of the shin.
Mine are very tight right now.
Yeah. we have our extensors on the sides of our calf as well.
And then you got all those big sexy quads.
And then we've got, all of the muscles of our quads and our hamstrings. So when any of those muscles might be tight, it's going to pull on the knee joint. So one thing that we are always like big advocates of is starting from the ground up. So if your feet are really tight, they're going to pull on the calves, that are going to pull on the knee, they're going to pull on the quads, and the hamstrings. And it could go in the other chain reaction too. If your quads and hamstrings are really tight, it's going to pull on everything else down chain as well. So really starting to look at the chain reaction that does take place. But when we are experiencing, say, inflammation in a joint, we do want to make sure that we're resting it and icing it and elevating it, right? That RICE.
RICE, yeah.
Yeah, that RICE acronym.
You don't want to compress the knee specifically.
But yes, I definitely wouldn't compress it. And one of the things he said is that it really bothers him when he sits on his knee. So that's compression of that knee joint. So we really don't want to be sitting on that knee joint if we can avoid too much of the bending of it when we do have that inflammation. There are lots of ways that we can stretch our quads without having to necessarily bend our knee joint and bring our heel to our glutes.
And one last thing I do want to touch on for that is that a lot of people have the conception that the knee is just a hinge joint, when the knee is actually a screw joint. So when your knee goes to full extension, your patella actually shifts and goes down as a screw. And then when you lengthen that knee joint again, it actually just like if you pay attention to your knee when you do a full straightening of the knee, it actually twists and locks in. So it is like a screw joint. It sure does hinge, but making sure that, especially with the inflammation, we're not going to that full extension and we're also not going to full flexion.
Cool. Hopefully that helps. So Michelle's Thorn was really about life being difficult, but always looking at there's always tomorrow. So the idea of I might be in the thick of the mud right now, but good things are coming. Good things are coming. And one of the things I often do in those moments is like, I will ask the universe to like, give me a sign that I'm on the right path. Show me something today that reminds me that I'm trudging in the right direction, because especially in those moments where we're feeling really low, it feels monotonous to keep wanting to go. So like one of the things that I always see is repeating numbers. That's been something that's been really apparent in my life lately. And those repeating numbers for me are just that affirmation that I can do this. Just keep going, right? I have Dory in the back of my head, like just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And I'm going to keep swimming along here. And good things are going to come to those who don't give up.
And I do want to throw this out there too. I love that you wrote the word difficult like 19 times in this. And the reason I love that is because you and Michelle, you know me very well. We talk a lot about this. Life is difficult, but we get to choose our difficult too, right? So I know certain circumstances we don't have all the control over, but the fact that you are on this journey, and this journey is a hard journey, means that you're choosing this difficult so that you don't have to deal with the difficult that comes out the other side if you choose to ignore it.
So choose your hard.
You're choosing your hard, and we are working through that together. And I absolutely love this journey that you've been on with us. So keep on, just keep swimming. We got this.
Just keep swimming. Indeed. I know Keegan's got our son Keegan, he has a book, and it's called Dragon Can Do Hard Things. And whenever I think of like life being difficult and stuff, I'm like, if a dragon can do hard things, I can do hard things.
I'm a dragon.
I'm a dragon. I was born in the year of the dragon. So I'm a dragon. Anyways, Christine says cravings. Trying to drink water and move is helping most of the time to alleviate and distract, but needing to reevaluate the pantry. So we talk about kitchen cleanup or kitchen tune-up quite a bit. Where we put things in our fridge and our pantry.
Out of sight, out of mind is a real thing, because like you said, if you open your pantry every day and Sour Patch Kids are staring you in the face, you better believe that you're going to be thinking about those Sour Patch Kids. I would be 100%. Right now we have a bag of chips that has been sitting in our cupboard for the last 2 weeks. And every time I open that damn cupboard, I'm like, those chips are looking good right now. Right. So it really is, especially when we are on this journey where we're looking to create a change in our lives, having the things that are the easy grabs, the things that you've gravitated towards in the past, whatever they are. It doesn't matter if it's chips or crackers or candy or whatever it might be, ice cream, right? Whatever it is, having those away from you is going to be your best friend to begin with. Now, does that mean cravings will stop altogether?
No.
Probably not, right? But in that moment, I love what you're doing already. Trying to drink water, getting up and moving, doing things to distract the mind away from those cravings is a great starting place for sure. And those cravings will wane over time, right? So if we are somebody like myself who craves salty all the time, right? I love chips. If I'm craving them all the time, eventually that craving will go away, right? Like it's not like it's going to be there forever. For me anyways.
Well, hunger comes in waves, right?
Well, hunger and cravings are different.
They are. Cravings a lot of the time are more mental than they are actually hunger related.
Cravings can also be to the gut flora too, right?
Yeah,
so
it depends on what's going on in our system. So pay attention to the types of cravings you're having and whether it's a craving or I just saw it and now I want it.
Yeah.
Cravings can be a really good symptom of, oh, hey, maybe I need more water. Maybe I need more magnesium. Maybe I just need more sodium in general in my life. So there's lots of things that we can kind of add into our diet that will help with cravings. And alleviating those. I love that you're giving yourself distractions. So getting up and moving, and finding other ways to alleviate those cravings. sparkling water, warm tea, those kinds of things can be quite helpful. But making sure that when you do stock your pantry and your fridge, anything that you want yourself to eat more of, put it at eye level. So like when you look in the fridge or you look in the pantry, whatever is at eye level is going to be first where your eyes gravitate towards.
Yeah.
So making sure that you are stocking things like that. And then like Mike said, out of sight, out of mind. So take those Sour Patch Kids, maybe stick them behind, I don't know, something that you don't necessarily eat often in the pantry. Like for us, that might be like some of the like nuts and seeds that we use for making granola. Because I would never think to look back there for them. But those kinds of things can really, really help with that. Other thing to think about is hunger is a really good sign that we are achieving that weight loss.
That's what I was going
So
to say.
I know that that's the journey that we are on together sometimes. And so making sure that we are paying really good attention to that.
Yeah, and I did want to, like, because Kayla had mentioned hunger, I did want to say that if hunger cues are those things, when we don't have them when we're on a weight loss journey, it means that we're not going to be achieving that weight loss. Like
Not necessarily.
as uncomfortable as hunger can be, it is where we need to find that comfort and discomfort when we are on that weight loss journey. And that doesn't mean you have to be hungry all the time. Of course, we're going to be eating, and when we do eat, I would suggest eating high volume foods, things that you get lots of, to help with those hunger cues throughout the day. Lower calorie, higher volume foods.
And if you guys need ideas of high volume foods or even low volume foods, because say you're somebody that's trying to gain weight, we do have resources on that for you guys. So
calorie density is a real thing.
Yeah, please do reach out. So Willow's Thorn was coming out of an illness, is a bit of a pain, practicing grace and balance with herself. So when we are recovering from an illness, it is really important that we ease back into our workouts, that we don't just jump back to where we were. Willow and I had a chat about going through the range of motion versus necessarily lifting the weights or the resistance
yeah.
that we were previously doing. Sometimes it's just, okay, I just want to go through the motion. I just want to practice doing these movements. And then maybe the next week I can push a little bit more and slowly, gradually increasing that over time.
Yeah. And as far as illness specifically goes, this isn't speaking so much on the injury side, but we are talking about illness here. So one thing that most people will notice is when you come through an illness, especially if it was something like a stomach flu or anything where you weren't able to eat what you normally do, energy levels are definitely going to be lower than they typically have been because we haven't been taking in as much energy throughout our days. So starting to stabilize the food before we get into the more serious exercise. So making sure, again, that we're feeling well enough to get the food in, and then starting to increase that the amount of food that we are getting in, increasing the fuel source for our body before we're getting super like back to the levels that we were is really important, because again, you're going to need the calories for recovery. You're going to need the calories just to get that base level of energy back up.
I think for her too, it was the fatigue post illness. So I'll use COVID as an example. I don't know that that's what she had, but I know that she was ill for a period of time and then had fatigue post illness. And so that fatigue post illness, a lot of the time is our body trying to get better. Like as much as we might not be having the physical symptoms in other ways, our body is still looking for rest and recovery, and we're still feeling a little bit run down. So making sure that we have enough vitamins such as your vitamin C and your zinc and all of those kinds of things, vitamin D. Yeah, making sure that we are adding things into our food to help with our immune system and boosting our immune system. Things like lemon and ginger and garlic and all of those wonderful things that really do help build that immune system up. Leafy greens, those are going to help with minimizing the long-term effects of fatigue, but fatigue in general can be something that does happen post-illness. So it is just important to move when you feel that you can and rest when you feel that you need rest, and listening to that body until you do come out of it.
Yep. And yeah, just calories are what are going to help us feel better too. So as soon as we can start getting that food back in, starting to get those food levels back up.
Riker's Thorn was hitting his workouts because he was injured.
Stop with the Brazilian jiu-jitsu. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he had a little bit of a neck and shoulder injury the other day. And so we did say, listen to your body. Don't do things necessarily that might not feel so great right now while your body is recovering. Heat, ice, those kinds of things are going to really help on those injured parts.
Yeah, you'll always hear us say this, guys, and there's no point in pushing through an injury unless you were like, if you play in the NHL and it's the playoffs, sure, you might need to push through an injury. If you are somebody who is on a health journey for any reason outside of you are a professional athlete that is getting paid millions of dollars to do it, there's no real point to push through the injury because we don't want to make any symptoms worse and we want to get ourselves and our bodies feeling better. So does that mean that we sit still like a bump on a log? Probably not, but it does mean that we got to tame back the workouts that we're doing. And again, similar to what Kaila was talking about with, I believe it was Christine's, just working on the full range, or no, with Willow's, just working on the full range of motion and getting our body back to moving. And again, if we are dealing with an acute injury, working the muscles that might support the joint can be helpful as well. So if you have a shoulder injury, starting to work the chest and the back a little bit, isolating outside of that shoulder so that we can start to strengthen the supporting musculature around it can be very important coming out of an injury.
And just general movement, like things like going for a walk, because
Stretching, light
motion
stretching.
is lotion for the body. The more that I think that this is like something that often our medical system will say, oh, you're injured, rest. And yes, that is important. But if you rest and you do not move those muscles and those joints, then what ends up happening is things stiffen over time and they tighten. And like I've got a client right now, like we're recovering from a pretty serious injury. But really it's now relearning, how do I move these muscles? How do we begin to actually loosen these muscles that are almost frozen so making sure that we do go through motion, that we do start to, even just going through warm-up motions, like lubricating the joints, that's really important.
Well, that's one thing I was going to say too, because I did say, stretching can be beneficial and it can be 100%, but we got to really kind of be careful with those ranges of motion when we are getting into deeper stretches, especially with an injury, making sure that we're not kind of exacerbating that injury by pushing a stretch too far, and also never stretching cold muscles. So whenever we are going to stretch, and I've had clients who have had, back issues or hip issues, and they were just told by physio to just start stretching. And I'm like, well, you don't want to just stretch cold muscles. So even if it's as simple as doing some like hip bridges in bed or whatever it looks like to get some blood flow into those muscle bellies before we stretch them is super important. So never stretch a cold muscle, even when you're coming out of an injury, just get some basic movement and then you can stretch it.
I think I am going to add the caveat in here. If you guys are suffering from any amount of injury or really, really sore muscles, joints, all of those kinds of things, please reach out to us or another healthcare professional that can assist you in the process. We will definitely give more specific recommendations on a one-to-one basis versus it being a general basis like this, because you definitely don't want to exacerbate the injury or do any further damage.
Yep. Good.
Okay. Chris had said getting back to workouts
routine.
and finding that routine being his thorn. So routine is a hard one, especially when we work shift work, meaning, we have a different schedule when we're working versus when we're not working. My piece of advice is find the flow that works best for you in those two different scenarios.
And progress over perfection, right? So if we have a super busy work schedule, like I'll use myself as an example. I used to be an oil field firefighter. My schedule was insane. So when I was doing that, the likelihood of me being able to fit in my workouts would be if I took my TRX system, I could do it off the side of the fire truck. That was about it. So again, finding what I could do and then playing with that, right? So does that mean that everybody can do what I did? Not a chance, right? So looking at our schedule, seeing where we can fit it in, and not getting too fixed on the fine details of, if I miss a workout because I was too busy one day, not getting too hung up on that and being able to be very fluid with that schedule and finding what works for you and starting to build that schedule.
Think daily movement versus it having to be a set work out specifically if that's important to you. Also just figuring out what routine works. Maybe you don't have an hour to put aside for a workout, but maybe you have 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there, and we could, break apart things over time. Again, it's about how do we look at the longevity of our habits, routines, and desires? And when does it fit easiest into our routine? Like, I know for me, as much as I would love to work out midday because that would feel best for me, I really dislike getting up early, but I also know it's the only time in my day that I can actually fit it into my routine.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to say too is that I absolutely love your rose on this one, Chris, because your rose was that you went to the gym twice, you had a run, and you had 2 walks. So again, busy schedule, days on, maybe we're just focusing on the walks. Maybe we're focusing on that daily movement, like Kayla's saying. And I happen to know where you work. And I also happen to know that you have stairs outside of your work that are like 80 or 90 stairs high. So you could run stairs at work.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Right? Or just come to spin. No.
Okay, moving on, Cindy. Getting those carbs is being a little bit more difficult, and finding foods that are helpful. Things like honey. Well, honey might be helpful. It probably is not the only source of carbohydrate that we want to consume. I would look at fruits and whole grains as our carb sources. One thing to look at for increasing daily carbs is really just to increase portion sizes versus increasing amount of things, meaning, like if you're a snacker, you could add in some fruit or some dried fruit. But if you're not really a snacker, maybe you just increase your amount of potatoes or rice or
beans or
whatever that might
whatever
be.
it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I love that you brought that up, and I do want to touch on just the subtle differences, right? Because honey's great, right? Everybody loves honey. But honey is a simple sugar. It's not going to be that complex carbohydrate, so it's not going to give you the sustained energy. Now, I know that we're just looking at carbs as a macronutrient, which is great. Yes, honey is a carbohydrate. It is a macronutrient. The problem with honey, and again, doesn't have to be a problem, but it's going to spike your blood sugar levels, and then you will have that crash after that. So if we're going to have honey or things like that, pairing that honey with something that's going to slow
A
that
fat or a
digestion down.
protein or
Yeah,
a fiber.
Fat, protein, fiber, or like a complex carbohydrate will help regulate that blood sugar level long term. So when we're looking at carbohydrates, trying to focus more on those complex carbohydrates as your main energy source, because again, our bodies love energy. Our bodies will use the energy that we give it. And the most sustainable energy source that we can give our bodies, long-term energy for your day, is going to be those complex carbohydrates. So it sustains that blood sugar levels, keeps the energy more even throughout your days, and you'll find that you'll get less of those highs and those lulls throughout your day of energy. So that's my 2 cents on
And
that
if you want to add honey into your day, you could do things like what they call them protein balls or energy balls. I call them energy balls because really the amount of protein that you're getting from them is very negligible. It's like anywhere from like 2 to 5
They're
grams,
carb balls.
maybe. They're more carbohydrates and fats. Those would be a good option to add honey in because usually they're held together with honey.
Yeah.
Or homemade granola would be another great one. If you're looking for that kind of sweet tooth that's going to boost carbohydrates and healthy fats. But
again, nothing wrong with honey. I love it too. And I wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with it. It's just when we're looking at increasing carbohydrates, I would suggest starting on the complex carb side of the world. So your rices, your beans, your pastas, your potatoes.
Sweet is really palatable for our brains and for our palate itself. Like if you think about young children, a lot of the things that they like to eat are very sweet.
Young children. Are you calling me a young child? Young as hell over here.
Yeah. No, but you think about like the purees and stuff that people make for babies and stuff. They're usually like the carrots or like apple sauces and like the fruit sauces. We just are acclimated to that sweet because usually sweet actually means higher caloric value. That's what it means to the brain on a survival mechanism. So when we think of that, it's like, okay, well, we want to train that palate to also be okay with not so sweet, right? So decreasing the amount of sweet foods that we do have in our diet will also help us with also reducing cravings and the desire to overconsume because sweet is an easy thing to overconsume. So anyways, there's that.
Yeah.
Okay, and last but not least, eating calories. And so Megan had said her Thorn eating calories. I'm all over the place this week. So one of the things that I do offer, so I do have some people that are on macros that are counting in chronometer. We have some people that are doing portion sizes. And one of the more recent things I've started giving is more of a meal plan that is based around those macros or those portion sizes overall. That takes a look at what is your eating rhythm. What are the things that you normally eat? What are the things that you normally enjoy? And I give you guys recommendations for quantities so that it makes it a little easier. So if you normally eat eggs and toast for breakfast and we put that in, say maybe that's breakfast, I tell you, this is the amount of eggs you want to have. This is how much toast and how much butter or how much coffee or whatever it is that you want to have. And then if you swap it out, you can go, okay, I'm going to swap those eggs because I know they're a protein and a fat for maybe like I'm going to have bacon and a cottage cheese. I don't know. So
Or oats and stuff like.
you could swap them out for different sources of the same kind of idea, but it gives you more of that quantity because at the end of the day, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. 1 gram of carbohydrate is 4 calories. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So knowing that it's easier to kind of swap things out, so that might be helpful, Megan, in looking at giving you the overall like view for your week, rather than being reactive, because I think that reactive idea is sometimes where we fall into, like, life is really busy. Managing a household is really busy. Running all over the place is really busy. And when I have to manage it all, my food goes out the window because I just don't have time to also manage that. So can we get back to the 3 meals a day? Can we get back to just focusing on the one thing that I can bring my awareness to with it versus it feeling so sporadic? So maybe my one thing is I'm just going to choose a healthier lunch option, or I'm just going to eat less carbohydrates at dinner because I decided that I needed to have a granola bar midday or whatever that might look like.
Yeah, for sure. And as far as like you said, calories all over the place, meaning you're probably high one day, low the next day, like literally just back and forth or however that looks. Trying to find a bit of a rhythm and routine with that too. And I think that's what Kayla's leaning towards with getting back to the 3 meals a day, getting back to kind of the basics of it. Because again, we want this journey to be as easy as we can. When things get harder is when things start to fall off. So when we were looking at, again, I think it was Chris with the routine. When we're looking at creating routine, looking at simplifying the routine the best we can. So yeah, exactly what Kayla's saying, starting to look at, well, what are the things that I enjoy? Are these things that I can make feasible every day? And then, obviously most people get bored with the same food every day. So what Kayla was saying again with that meal plan idea where it's like, okay, this is roughly what I eat every day, but here's options that I could swap out. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, definitely reaching out because we can put those together for you guys.
Yeah. Well, guys, this was our Rosebud Thorns for the week of February 21st. If you've got Rosebud Thorns and you want to share them with us, whether you're a current, past, or maybe a future client, please do send them on to us. We are more than happy to read them out each week and go through them with you all. We love sharing our wealth of knowledge, and we also love hearing how things are going for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you
Have
guys.
an awesome week, guys.
Bye.